Relational databases. They are just tables of data. Tables of data that have related data in them. And often there's a lot of tables with related data in them. Relational databases are great because you can use them to store and process any kind of business data. The problem is, relational databases don't really have a user interface. I mean, they have this thing. You type some code into a SQL editor and then you get one table of results to look at, and then you do that over and over again. This works only if you're a programmer, and even then it's rather tedious. We do have CRUD apps though, like Jira or Salesforce. A CRUD app is a user interface to a relational database, except it's built for just one specific set of database tables. So if you have a custom database of some sort, you're out of luck, or you'd have to build a new CRUD app from scratch. I'm going to show you a completely different approach. I'm going to show you Ultorg. Ultorg is a general-purpose database app. It works with any set of database tables that you throw at it. So as an example here, I've connected Ultorg to a Postgres database. This one is kind of a classic example you might find in a database textbook. It's a database of university courses. There's a table of courses, there's a table of instructors, there's a table of books with like a reading list for each course, and so on. So I'm going to show you what a database query looks like in Ultorg. Here, we're just showing one column from the courses table. The first basic thing I can do is to just select which columns I want to show. So I open this pop-up and I click maybe ID, enrollment limit, and distribution area. Easy enough. But this is a relational database, so if we want to see all the data we have about a course, we actually need to bring in related data from each of these other tables that we have. Now in Ultorg, this is very easy. Just like we were able to select some columns to show from the courses table, we can show some related columns from the readings table. Now what you're seeing here, this is a visual representation of what you'd call a join operation in SQL. You can see that each row in the readings table has a course ID. And that course ID is matched with the ID of each course in the courses table. So that way each course gets a list of readings in its reading list. You can see the blue arrow here in the sidebar. It shows which table the data is coming from, depending on where I put the cursor. Now these numeric identifiers are not very informative, so while you're looking at the data, you can just hide them. And then we have a nice display of courses and the reading list for each course. In fact, I'm going to close the sidebar now, because everything you do in Ultorg, you always start by just making a selection in your data somewhere. It's what we call a direct manipulation interface, just like a spreadsheet. Now, we have more data that we can pull up. If I click this button, I can hide all the primitive fields and just see the tables that are related to the courses table. It's very quick for us to expand the rest of the relationships here. Each course has meetings, like lectures or labs, and then each meeting has one or more instructors. This is a kind of visualization that you won't find in any other commercial tool. It's a nested table. It visualizes 4 joins between 5 database tables. Each bold heading here is a database table. So each course in the course catalog has a list of readings, but independently of that, each course also has a list of meetings, and each meeting in turn can have multiple instructors. Like here, the course Introduction to African American Literature has 2 lectures and a precept, and the precept has 2 instructors, Pamela Barnett and Miriam Petty. You can also have cases where there are no matching rows at all. Like here, the course Human Evolution has no readings in its reading list. In SQL, this can be tricky, but Ultorg knows how to visualize that. In fact, you can't really do this kind of query directly in SQL. This is not the kind of flat table that you would get back as a result of a SQL query. This is data from multiple SQL queries that Ultorg has stitched together. And you can imagine writing out all of these joins in SQL. You'd have quite a lot of typing to do just for these 5 tables. Now these tables, they had relationships set up between them already at the database level, so Ultorg detected that, and it made it very quick for us to bring up these joins. But you could do manually specified joins as well. Now once you're looking at all the right data, you can start doing things like sorting and filtering. I can sort each reading list by author name, and I can filter to show only the courses taught by Brian Kernian. Okay, he's teaching advanced programming techniques. Sorting, filtering, these operations, they all work within the context of these nested one-to-many relationships. Now suppose I want to see just all the data we have about each course. I could go in and I could select every available field, but now I get a very wide table and I have to scroll a lot. That's not ideal. But there's another kind of visual layout that you can use to present this data. I can tell Ultorg, show this data in a form layout, like this. This is the kind of data layout you'd see in traditional handmade CRUD applications, except you'd usually have to design this thing, like you'd be typing in HTML or using some sort of form designer, where you'd have to drag and drop each one of these fields onto a canvas. In Ultorg, all of this layout stuff just happens automatically. It's figured out that, oh, this field is named title, so it should probably be in the big font. The description field tends to have long text values in it, so we should probably give it some space here. And there are 2 subtables here that we can fit down here, and we can make you a nice paginated print layout too. And all of this is just a different way of looking at the same data as you were seeing before. And we can still use all the same operations that were available from the nested table layout. So I can filter here again and find that course by Brian Kernian. So this course form, this would be a good page to work from if you're trying to edit the data, or if you're reviewing the contents of the course catalog. But often you want to do different kinds of queries depending on what kind of business task you're working on. So suppose you want to find out which instructors have the highest teaching load. I can create another perspective here using the instructors table as a starting point. Now, using the same operations as I was showing you before, I can expand out the relationships in the opposite direction, from instructors to courses, going through instructor assignments and meetings. Now we see a list of instructors, and for each instructor, the seminars, lectures, and so on that they've been assigned to teach. Then next, if I want to calculate the time here for each meeting, I can insert a formula next to the start time and the end time, and I can calculate the number of hours in each meeting. One day this formula will be a little simpler, but this is basically end time minus start time. And I can go up here and I can name this column hours. So I entered the formula once, and it applies to the whole column. I didn't have to drag it down like in Excel. Now, because I added this formula under this meetings heading, the calculation will happen at the level of each meeting. But suppose I want to get a total for each instructor. Then I add another formula, and I do it out here under the instructors heading. And I say sum of that other formula. And now we have the totals calculated for each instructor. And I didn't have to specify a group by clause or anything like that. Ultorg figured it out. Now I could sort by the totals, maybe put a bar chart on that column, and we can see that Michael Littman is on top, teaching 15 hours per week. Notice, though, that what we're seeing here is not only the totals, but also the individual rows that went into each aggregate. This is something you don't get when you're running SQL queries. You'd only see the totals. And it's useful to see the inputs to each aggregate, because now we can double check our work and maybe make some adjustments. Like, maybe we realize that we only want to count time spent in lectures. So I can set a filter here, and now you see the totals change. In fact, now Michael Littman is no longer on top. Instead, we have James Smith. And now maybe we're happy with our query, we just want to see the totals. Then I just hide the bold header here, and we have a nice summary of the results. The formulas and everything, they're still there. We can bring them back. We've just chosen to hide them. This ability to see the same data from multiple perspectives is one of the things that really distinguishes a database from a spreadsheet. And we can end here by showing you how we can use this form view that we made earlier to edit one of the courses. This one is taught by Lars Svensson. And we can make his Wednesday lecture run late into the night. So I've staged that edit now. And when I press Apply Edits, that edit will get committed to the database. And in the other query over here, you'll see Lars Svensson move to the top of the list. There you go. Now Lars Svensson is teaching 15 hours per week. So in conclusion, we have here a visual system that lets you do the same kinds of things as you can do in SQL, but also the same kinds of things that you could do in a custom developed CRUD app, except it works on any relational database out of the box.